Hi everybody, today we're going to take a little look at Home Assistant. Now you may think, well, where does this fit in with solar? So this is really the start of a basic guide of how to set up Home Assistant, how to get everything installed, and then which plugins that you need, how to set those up, and how to connect your inverter in a couple of different ways. It's going to be a series, so have a look at the whole Home Assistant playlist because you'll need to follow each video more or less in order to be able to get there. If you need to know anything else on Home Assistant, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. There are huge numbers of videos out there on YouTube for Home Assistant guidance and configuration and creating dashboards and whatever you want. And I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to relate this to the Solax integration and the management of your solar system. I've just loaded the Home Assistant interface for the standard energy panel. It's what's called the standard energy panel on the left-hand side there. Now you can see that we've got a date select at the top, so you can see your information by day, week, month or year, or jump to today. And here it shows the energy usage, a little bit like in the Solax cloud, of each hour of the day. And if you go into week, it shows it for each day of the week, and month for each day of the month. Now it's broken down into your imports, your export, the battery consumption, things like that, and the total consumed and the total return to the grid. So you get a good breakdown of exactly what your solar installation is doing. Another benefit which the Solax Cloud doesn't have is it just details your solar your solar output. Okay, so it's just solar production. Solax Cloud, they seem to bundle it in with other graphs, and you can't separate out just what did my solar installation produce that day. So again, you can see that day I produced 52.1 kilowatt hours, and it does that every day. And then we go down to a flow diagram of how much energy was generated, how much the home consumed, how much went in and out of the battery, and how much went in and out of the grid. So you can see in the last month I've used 1 kilowatt hour from the grid and put 710 back into the grid. It can then keep track of costs, so you can see your savings and various other statistics in a table form, and then it works out how much self-consumed solar energy you have down here and how much energy you've returned to the grid. And all this is more or less standard functionality, and it's really good to have. But it does lack a few things, and you can build in Home Assistant and create your own dashboards that look like this or look something completely different. So this here that I've put on the left hand side is my own eccentric design with more information on than the standard energy flow in Home Assistant. For example, I wanted to maybe add an EV, and this one was actually going to be a water heater, but that's not actually installed yet. And each of the sections here, the solar by the solar icon, the battery, the inverter and the grid, I wanted some more information on the main screen so I could see what was going on. So I developed this. I have solar array 1 up at the top and solar array 2, and you could put more around there if you had more arrays, and then details of the panels and what they're producing. So it's night time at the moment, but you can see that they produced 51.6 kilowatt hours today, and it's currently dark. Moving on to the battery, you can see the temperature of the battery, what percentage of state of charge it is, how many watts is currently being consumed out of the battery and the fact that it is discharging, and how long at this rate it would take for the battery to be empty. And at the bottom it shows how many kilowatt hour approximately are left in the battery. The inverter shows inverter temperature, what percentage of the inverter is being used, how many watts it's currently power going through it, and which mode and grid bias mode that it's in. And the same for the grid. We've got 43 watts. It shows whether it's importing or exporting, what percentage of the maximum allowed export control allowance there is. And today we've had 100 watts import and 37.9 kilowatt hours export. Alright, and down here it just shows a picture of the house, and that glows more strongly depending on how much consumption it's using, how much house load there is, but at the moment it's late at night and there's 329 watts of load. So I wanted to make this into a little application, and I'll just show you around the application to show you what's possible with Home Assistant over and above what the default energy interface does. So that's this is the home menu. This is where it goes to, and it's my standard display. On from that, I have something that's a little bit experimental, and I'm adding and taking from it and reorganizing it all the time. So this is just a list version of the main screen with some more information. So at the top I've got my solar. This is the solar banner, and it shows the solar outputs today and the solar output total. So you can see I've generated 3.7 megawatt hours, and these are the details at the moment of PV array 1 and PV array 2. It's both the amperage, the current, the voltage, and the wattage output. The second banner is the battery. So we can see we've had 6 kilowatt hours of charge today and 4.4 kilowatt hours of discharge today. And again, we've got the stats over here, the temperature, the percentage SOC, how many kilowatts are left in it, the discharge in amps, volts and watts. The next banner is the grid. So today 100 watt hours import, 37.9 kilowatt hours export, and this is the total grid import and export since the inverter was installed. The next one is to do with the scheduling. So this takes the readings straight from the inverter, and it's the stop and start charge times for the charge period, and the start and stop discharge time period, and the battery heating functionality. So you can set a schedule for keeping the battery warm in the very cold winter months. The next one is the inverter. It shows the mode, self-use, what the export limitation is, and there's a little bug there, so don't worry about that. The maximum charge rate of the battery and the maximum discharge rate of the battery in amps, and then you can see the percentage of the inverter that's being used, the temperature, the grid frequency, and the amps, volts and wattage of power going through it. Now the bottom one is to do with the Octopus Energy plugin. I'm on the Octopus Energy Flux tariff, and this monitors the Octopus Energy tariff live through their website. It's not actually live, but it's connected, and it shows information which is a day old, hence yesterday's total. So this is my standing charge, which is 50 pence. I've bought 0.068 kilowatt hours of energy from the grid, costing 3 pence. Yesterday I've put 31 kilowatt hours into the grid, and they've paid me £7.92 for that. So my net total for yesterday is earnings of £7.39. Of course, that's on top of the bills, the electricity bill being free of charge. So the electricity bill is free, and on top of that they pay me £7.39 for yesterday's energy export. And just on the right hand side here, you can see that this is the rate that I'm currently being charged for purchasing electricity on the grid, and this is the charge which is coming next, because it changes or can change every half hour. And the bottom one is the amount that I get paid for exporting energy to the grid, and you can see that's 21.7 pence at the moment. So I've just added a few more details to that screen which I particularly found interesting, and you could customize that to show any information that you wanted to. Okay, moving on to schedules. I added this in so it was easy to change the discharge and charge schedules, and also the newly added battery heating. So you can see you've got schedule 1 here, start time, end time for charging, start time, end time for discharging, and the battery heating start time and end time. This is live, so if I change it now, it changes on the inverter straight from the Home Assistant app, and it's an awful lot easier to use than the Solax Cloud app. There's also a second schedule that you can set up. It's currently disabled, but if we enable it, you get exactly the same again, but the period 2s, which are reflected on the same Solax app. I'll leave that disabled. I'm not using them at the moment. Graphs and charts. Now this is the interesting bit. You can present the information in any way that you would like in the interface. So if you want a specific graph or chart, you can create it. You can then add it to your app and view it later. I'll just show you a few of mine. So in the solar section, just wait for it to load. You can see that I have 2 solar arrays. The yellow one is solar array 1. The orange is solar array 2, and the total solar output is designated in blue. And you can see that mine are an east-west array, so I get charged from early in the morning, and then they start to overlap, and the total ends up much more of a lower bell curve than you would if you just had a southern array. So I don't have as high a peak, but I get much more of a spread from 6 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. And then you can use the controls down here to see various days it was cloudy, and compare things, and you can actually go back as far as the history in the inverter in Home Assistant allows you, and this builds and increases on a daily basis. So at the moment, this flag here tells us where we are at the moment. It's 10:30 at night, more or less. And you can see the output of every panel and the total output for every 5 minutes of every day when the sun went behind a cloud, etc, etc. Very useful information. I have some tabs across the top so I can see my daily solar outputs, and it just gives a bar chart of every single day and how many kilowatt hour the output was. So we've got 52 there, and then I've got 18.1 there, which must have been a very dull day. But in general, it's been a very healthy time of year in the United Kingdom. And then the cumulative. So this shows from the beginning the solar output altogether, right up to the 3.7 megawatt hour, which it is at the moment. And again, you can use the slider at the bottom to zoom in and see any part of that chart that you want to. Really useful stuff. And all this is just generated by simple scripting language in Home Assistant, thanks to all the geniuses that create the integrations. I'm not going to go through all the charts. There are lots of them, but you can see in a similar vein, you can see the wattage of the battery, how it changes. We have negative discharge and positive for charge, and you can scroll and see that at any point in time. Volts of the battery, exactly the same thing. See how the volts changed. The current of the battery in amps, and the percentage SOC, so you can graph the percentage of the battery state of charge going up and down. And of course the temperature, so I quite like this one, and it actually the line changes colour as it goes colder and warmer, which is a nice little touch, and it shows you the current temperature up there. In the inverter section, same thing. I actually created this to mimic or improve on the one on the Solax cloud, and as you can see, it overlays all the different power of the battery, inverter, PV on top of each other, so you can actually see what's going on at any time. And you can also, like in the Solax app, you can get rid of the ones that you don't want. We don't want PV power, etc., and just see the ones that you do want and overlay them on top of each other, which is quite useful for fault finding and seeing what's happening. Grid import graphs. So this is the power now of the instant grid import. We've got daily bar charts again. I import almost nothing, so you can see the scale is just tiny on these, and then it's a cumulative import ever since the statistics were generated. And I do exactly the same for grid export. We see the instant export throughout the day, bar graphs for each daily export. You can see them quite good ones there, 44 kilowatt hour to the grid for quite a small system, and then the cumulative export, 2.2 megawatt hours in total is been exported. I don't know what else to go through. There are all sorts here. So the Octopus ones are linked directly to the Octopus account. So this tells me exactly how much I've paid for grid import. That's 50 pence. 50 pence. There's some that are a slight bit more, but the scale is very small, as you can see, because I only essentially pay the standing charge, which is 50 pence. This is not including the this is not financial, so this is the kilowatt hours, and again some of the bars look high, but the scale is tiny. You can see that's just 0.068 kilowatt hours on that day. Cumulative again, it's how much money I've paid over a certain period. So I've paid £10.1 of energy, which has all been standing charge, no energy at all. And the last tab on here is the rates tab. So it grabs the rates off the Octopus Energy website and puts them in a nice format, so you can see when the energy is cheap to buy, cheap to sell, and what price you're paying on a half-hourly basis. So these are import prices, because we're on the import section of the graphs. If I went onto the Octopus export section, I get exactly the same. It's how much they're paying me for export, how many kilowatt hours per day I've exported, the cumulative kilowatt hours, sorry, the cumulative pounds that they've paid me. This is just for June, and then the export rate. So you can see I get nothing in the early hours of the morning, and you get 34 pence per kilowatt hour between 4 and 7 o'clock, which is the flux tariff. And there's the last one, a little bit more information on finance. This graph shows the export versus import versus grid savings versus self-use savings. So you have to remember that everything that you use yourself, the energy from the PV, you are actually saving money on. It's not just getting paid for the export. So if we go along here, you can see I've saved £4.45 on self-use, and then I've paid my standing charge import, which is in red, the 50 pence. I've exported, so they've paid me £7.33, and the net grid savings is £6.82, and it does that every day. Again, we can change the time and the date, and brush through it as well with the controls at the bottom, and also turn each line on and off depending on what you want to see. But it's the export and the import, so it's the net grid savings on a daily basis. This is self-use savings, so how much a day using my own PV energy has saved me on this particular tariff. And then I have the cumulative, the stacked bar of the net grid savings plus the self-use savings. Right, and the last one is settings. So these are the inverter settings, which if you've seen some of my other videos, I've been through some of the settings. These are the ones, they're not all, but the ones I find most useful. So obviously the mode change, whether it's self-use, feed-in, backup, manual mode, is important. And then each mode just has a tab for its own individual settings. These are self-use settings, these are feed-in settings, they are backup mode settings, manual mode settings, and then advanced settings. So you can see if I want to change my grid bias, or I want to change the hot standby or the maximum charge rates, I can do it in there. These are the ones that are most useful to me, but by no means exhaustive. There are an awful lot more in the Solax Cloud app, which could be added in here if you wanted to. And it's literally just a case of dragging like that, and it instantly changes on the inverter, which is just very convenient to have it in the same place as your live view and your graphs and charts and statistics. So as a demonstration, I'm in self-use mode now. I can put it into feed-in priority mode, and if I go back to my main live screen, you can see it's already changed to feed-in priority, and the behavior of the system has changed as well accordingly. And back here, I'm going to put it back to self-use mode, and it just takes a few seconds just till the inverter settles into that mode, and then it goes back to self-use. So it's very, very easy, all in the same place, and I just turned it over time into this little application. Now it's that shape, and it's squashed over to the side of the screen because it's a mobile phone app. It's what we all have on our phones. So to control lights and other things in the house, so I decided to add the solar installation to that mobile phone app. You can create a desktop app, you can have it full screen, you can have your charts big. It's amazing what you can do with it. And just out of a matter of interest, I made these cogs interlock and turn round. I was just messing around, and in the end I quite liked it, so I left it like that. It may not be your preference, but you can do something else. So that's a little bit of an intro to Home Assistant, what it can do, and if you're interested in attaching that to your inverter and setting it up, then please follow my Home Assistant guides in order, and you will end up with something at the end which hopefully works really well. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for notification of new videos, and watch everything else as well, because it's all really interesting. Thank you very much, and see you next time.